Или, ну, вообще, да, да. Там есть такой миф про то, что люди сами приходят, ну, то есть сами себя обрекают, да, то есть, и как бы, и ты вдруг, да, понимаешь, то есть, как бы это про тебя же говорят, ты же тоже человек, понимаешь, да, 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 к примеру, то есть, а как так? А почему я такое решаюсь? А что тогда делать-то? Как же, наоборот, да. Хорошо, давай так. Если ты такой христианин или мусульманин, как жить? Ну, мусульманство там опасно, там, потому что, да, такой религиозный человек, да, как жить тогда по религии? Понимаешь? Если там христианин, как по-христиански жить, да? Да, понимаю. И чем больше ты будешь, тем больше будет это похоже на то, что я тебе говорю, да. Да, понимаю. Да, ну и что дальше? И ты будешь говорить, что люди будут растворяться в воздухе, в Бога будет, да, типа того, да. Типа того. Но как бы это не зафиксированные факты. Где вот эти факты? В малом, да, то есть как бы. Либо мы еще очень сильно не доросли до этого, либо мы знаем плохо психологию, там, всегда понимаю. То есть, но есть такая сикхи гипотеза, да, что как бы типа того. Да, 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 понимаешь. То есть, и как бы науки, наверное, да, да, да. Да, да, да. Ну, как бы грубо говоря. Но это опять же гипотеза. Нужен инструмент, чтобы это, да, то есть как бы, чтобы хотя бы что-то можно было сгипотезировать, так скажем, да, да. То есть, да, да, да. Это наши догадки только, что может быть есть какой-то, может, но не может. Ну и что, где кто кого, ну и, он тебя понимает просто, да. Если это действительно так, то ты должен в суд на всех подавать, кто в учебниках пишет, что не пишет, точнее, что душа не имеет веса, или что не существует души, или еще что-то. Ты просто нагло к ним приходишь и говоришь, вот мы, да, понимаешь, и они говорят, вы такой человек, такой сякой. И они, да, понимаешь, как бы, и ты на них подаешь в суд, и суд рассматривает, и суд решает. Ваши доказательства нету, все, они раскапывают это все. Ну, не знаешь, что ли, да, и там, ну, нету такого факта. То есть, как бы просто все, точка. Либо скажут, нету инструмента, который может это измерить. Да, если есть инструмент, ну, вот, ну, то есть, как бы можешь время сэкономить. Да, понимает он тебя, да. Для этого надо заниматься очень плотно наукой. Да. Ну, то есть, ну, наверное, да. Ну, так быстрее будет намного. Да. Да. Ну, не знаю, я просто так уже, да. Ну, да, да, да. Ну, не знаю, какие еще там. Прана измерен, да, аура, шмяура. Любая вот эта херня, да. Все, нету. И как ты, и фотографии ауры, сколько там их. И дальше что? Да, понимает. Ну, то есть это невозможно, это, как это невозможно доказать? Что тогда не так? Не с фотоаппаратами, что не так с тем, с кем? Да, поняла тебя просто, да. Да, то есть вы все мошенники, шарлатаны, то есть вот и все. В науке очень просто говорят, ты очень хочешь в это верить, вот и все. Заангажирован, да. Вот, да, то есть, и все, так оно и есть. Если ты пойдешь по этому пути, будет Аль-Каида. Да, это путь лжи, потому что да, там нет никакого пути, это все вранье просто. Бабское в мужском. Путь верований и упования это женская тема. Это у них получается, и да, понимаешь, да. Ну, что теперь сделаешь, не знаю. Да, наверное, так, да. Ну и ты и проживешь свою жизнь, ну да, и что ты смогла это сделать, да. Вот. Ну да. Нужен конкретно, либо эксперимент, серия целых экспериментов. Да, да, понимаю. Это все дорогостоящее довольно занятие, это точно говорю, да. Поэтому даже если ты в суд подашь, как бы тебе бабки надо будет платить не только за суд и за их работу, ну да. Понимаю, да. Ну ладно. Самый гуманный суд в мире, да. А там же им тоже что-то надо там подавать, как говорится, да. Это же тоже огромная работа, чтобы. Да, понимаю. Не касается, а просто так уже говорю. То есть, да. Ну, это тоже правильно. Давайте уверить мошенников тогда, если да, народ. Да, ну да. Ну это другое, понимаешь, да. Вообще работать можно, да? Жить давай. О, что? Да. Да, то есть, вот, так я тебе реально говорю, понимаешь, если ты представь себе, например, завтрашний день люди взвесили ауру. Вот реально просто раз и взвесили. Столько это, ну, к примеру, все, мир перевернут. То есть те, кто занимается чем-то вот этим биологией, микрохимией, там все эти, да, эти все такие, блин, да ты врешь. Опа, слушай, это как так? Ну попробуй сам. Ой, реально, взвешивается. Смотри, вот ты вес, да, типа того. Нет, у тебя прибор врет. Все это неправильный прибор у тебя. Разобрали прибор, все там, понимают, да, разобрались, повторили эксперимент других, то есть, да, понимают. Все, факт, понимает он тебя. И люди оттуда начинают, да, понимают, да, братья, да, понимают, да. Только и так всегда было, и, ну, как бы, и что теперь ты хочешь сказать? Да, то есть это надо, ну, вот так вот, да. Да, поняла тебя, да. Но это не может, ну, да, она поняла тебя. Поймешь, да. Ну, да не работает, скажи, да. Я другая область, не работает, да. Ну да. Нет, ты-то не сделаешь шаг вперед, естественно, да, понимаешь. Ты поняла. Ну ладно. Ну, так неинтересно же тогда даже. Вот это да, снова. Да, это да, даже так, да. Ну да. Долгие дела. Ну нет, значит не так, нет, значит, да, дело, да. Он тебя понял просто. Жизнь свою жизнь тогда не напрасно, йогу в жопу себе засунь, не ходи. Святой, потом ты умер, оказалось, что вообще ничего мужского у тебя не было вообще. Да. Ничего не оставил там. Да. Женщина зато добрая, но тебе все оставить. И их потомство. Большие, умные, красивые. Да! Самостояние. Выживающие очень сильно. Ну не уже, ладно, смешает уже, я просто. Должно быть, кто должен быть, как бы, ну, свирепый это мужик на первых порах может быть. На первых порах, потом, ну да. Ну вообще, кто как бы по природе более свирепый, мужчина или женщина? Да, то есть как бы более жестокий, более жесткий. Да, наоборот, что голос? А все наоборот опять, наоборот. По натуре, по гормонам даже, тупо не знаю я, что сказать. Да, понимаешь. Ну да. Ну да. Смелый, да, смелый. Скромный, да, понимаешь. Да. Наверное, то же самое, да, делаю просто. Что такое?
Well, welcome to today's talk. It's Thursday, the 9th of December. I want to do a bit of an Omicron update. Still reasonably optimistic, but let's go into some detail straight away on this. Now, this one is the Louise Restaurant Bar and the night of the 26th of November. So this is Oslo, and it's a Christmas party. Pretty early Christmas party, I would say, but nevertheless. Scartex Solar Power Company. One or two returned travellers from South Africa. There was actually two travellers returned from South Africa. Only one of them turned out to be positive, though, for SARS coronavirus 2. Had returned a few days earlier, so had been knocking around as normal in Norway after his return, where there was fairly limited restrictions actually at that time. Now, there was 120 people went to this party, 120, all doubly vaccinated from the Santec Solar Power Company group. And they had their own Christmas dinner and everything. Then about 11:30, when it was a bit later on, they started mingling with people outside later on from other guests from the hotel. Now, there were 70 of the 120 tested positive the day after, or in the days after, and 50 others from the hotel as well. So that's a total of 120 people testing positive. So 120 in the original company group, 70 of those tested positive. But they also infected 50 others in the hotel in the same evening. The 26th of November, by the way, was the evening. Well, the 26th of November was the day when the World Health Organization named the Omicron variant as a variant of concern. Half have tested positive for Omicron, it's more than half, as we said, it's 70 out of the 120. 13 have been confirmed with sequencing. The others are assumed to be Omicron from the S gene dropout that we know about. So it looks like most of those are in fact, Omicron variant. Dr. Tini Ravlo, Oslo Infectious Diseases, they have symptoms like fever, cough, headache, muscle pain, fatigue. Interesting. So they have got symptoms. There's quite a lot of people are symptomatic in the group. But now, and this was as of yesterday actually, this was yesterday's report, none of them have become severely ill and none of them have been treated in hospital. So of the 120, so far zero have become ill, which is encouraging. And this is actually 15 days ago now, I think. So the time is ticking on. So the next day, one of the two employees recently returned from South Africa tested positive, and then the other ones were found as well. Now, Norway's state epidemiologist, Frode Forland, sheer number of people infected at a single event, Omicron considerably more infectious than the Delta. So the sheer number of people that are infected, 120 people are altogether infected in that one evening, shows that this is a highly transmissible variant. The Omicron is more transmissible than the Delta. And when we look at what happened to Norway, this is really quite telling as well. Where are we? There we are. So this is Norway throughout the pandemic. So pretty low cases, what we might call first, second and third wave in Norway, but low numbers all the way through really. Until we get to the end here where we see this sudden increase here. And it looks like a lot of this is now on. Where are we? There we are. So this is Norway throughout the pandemic. So pretty low cases, what we might call first, second and third wave in Norway, but low numbers all the way through really. Until we get to the end here where we see this sudden increase here. And it looks like a lot of this is now Omicron driven. So way more numbers in Norway than there ever have been. Probably originating, many of them originating in that particular party. So this Professor Forland, Norwegian Institute of Public Health, he says there's one of the three scenarios for Omicron is that it would be both very mild and very transmissible. So that was a possibility, and he says that is the hope. That is the best scenario we can have. That it's getting, that says milder, but it should be getting milder. That most people will get it. Most people, probably just about everyone, is going to get it, and they will get a natural immunity. So the professor here is clearly saying that this will be associated with a natural immunity, which of course is absolutely brilliant if it's minimal, it's symptomatic disease. It might be that it is now replicated and mutated so many times that this is the optimal position from the virus's point of view to spread widely and not kill the host. So what the virus wants to do is to reproduce as much as possible. And if it goes around killing people, it's going to reproduce less, because if it kills someone, it's not going to carry on reproducing from that person. So it's natural that viruses do evolve to become milder. It looks like this process has been accelerated, as we saw yesterday when we said Omicron caught a cold. In other words, it got a particular genetic sequence from a common cold coronavirus. And the professor in Norway goes on to say, That's what we've seen with other diseases beforehand, so this is Atin is familiar with. And of course it then gets into more like an endemic phase. And this is me speaking, so this is not the end, because we know it's not the end because there's still a lot of delta going on in the world, and the delta is not finished yet. But I've said here, nor is it the end of the beginning, because I think we're past the beginning, we're past the end of the beginning, and I think really this could well be the beginning of the end. So if you excuse the melodrama there, I think that's probably roughly where we're at. But it's not the end yet, and I want to tell you why there's things I'm still concerned about. So Delta is still ravaging many, many countries. So here we have the new daily confirmed COVID cases per million people. And we go look at Japan, where the numbers are very low, and India, the numbers are still pretty low. Australia, Canada, South Africa has increased, of course, and we know there's all Omicron in South Africa. The United States, quite high, but we still believe that's mostly Delta, but causing quite a lot of hospitalisations in the States. That's the United Kingdom there. We see Norway, presumably presumably Omicron driven, has overtaken the United Kingdom, but of course we are getting daily more and more Omicron cases in the United Kingdom. Denmark, we know there's quite a lot of Omicron, and Ireland, it's quite unclear why the cases are so high at the moment in Ireland. So that's the sort of demographic, not demographic, but the incidence at the moment, or prevalence at the moment. The number of new COVID patients in hospital per million, which is probably the most important. This is the data that we have. So Denmark, we do see an increase. Norway, the numbers are low. There's a few days data missing, but the numbers are still low. United Kingdom, higher, Ireland, higher, United States. We know that in some areas of the States, hospitals are under quite a lot of pressure actually at the moment, although it is patchy around the country. Deaths, well, the United States deaths remain stubbornly high, unfortunately, and indeed have gone up quite a lot with this current Delta increase. Ireland, the deaths have gone up as well. United Kingdom, Denmark, Norway, thankfully low, Canada, India, South Africa, Australia, Japan. So they're the deaths at the moment. And what else have we got here? This is the estimated reproduction rate. So this is the R1 here, this line here is 1. So below this it's getting less, above that it's getting more, and we see the only country where cases are still reducing is Japan. Denmark, which has Omicron, is increasing. The United Kingdom, which is Omicron and Delta, is increasing. Ireland, we don't have genomic data. Canada, United States, Norway, which is probably largely Omicron driven, is increasing. And South Africa, which we know is pretty well entirely Omicron driven, well, is entirely, virtually over 90% Omicron driven. Very high rate of increase indeed, well over an R value of over 2. Now this is a bit out of date. South Africa is over 90% now. United States, that's probably about the latest we've got. India, Japan, Australia, Canada, Norway, we believe that Omicron is much higher than this, but we don't have the firm data yet. Denmark, we believe it's much higher than that, but we don't have the firm data yet. United Kingdom, it will be higher than this, but again, not firm data yet. And Ireland, sadly, somewhat lagging behind in terms of profiling. Moving age case fatality rates, so people dying per number of cases. India is quite high at the moment, which is sad to see. But looking at the other countries, so countries where there's more Omicron, like Denmark and Norway, very low figures. Ireland, not so many people dying. United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Japan. That's actually the United States there, because these are all sort of compressed down a bit. That gives you the order. So countries where there's a lot of Omicron spreading, like South Africa, the death rate is actually pretty low in South Africa. So this is the South Africa line here, and we see that the death rate has actually come down as Omicron has increased. And of course this is really remarkably encouraging, that we're hoping Omicron is going to be very, very mild. Now, we talked about the clinical features of Omicron yesterday from Dr. Kotsia in South Africa. And we've had some interesting communications from you as well. Sally reported, I've had Delta, This time last year, pretty rough, took 6 months to recover. Really, Sally, that is a long time. It just shows it can be a long time. And I have Omicron now. The symptoms of Omicron are as you state, which we'll go over in a minute, and she is vaccinated. So it looks like these symptoms are a bit consistent. Helgard in Gauteng in South Africa, in the epicenter, have tested positive 2 days ago. The symptoms is 100% correct as stated. Also after first symptoms 3 days, and I don't even know that I was sick, so symptoms only lasting, feeling better after 3 days. So Sally and Helgard both confirming the symptoms of Omicron because they're both Omicron positive. And let's just look at what these are. The symptoms that we know so far are muscle aches and pains, so achiness, headache, tiredness which lasts 1 or 2 days, slightly sore throat, no cough and no runny nose. So we are getting sort of collaboration that these do seem to be the main symptoms that are present, and these ones do seem to be the ones that are absent. We'll get much more data on that once Tim Spector gets going, of course. He's the best at getting the data on this. But let's look at some South Africa data now, because South Africa, as we've said, really is the sentinel on this. Now, this first slide from South Africa is the number of hospital admissions, and we are seeing an increase in the last couple of weeks. This data week here, week 49, is not yet complete. So we are seeing some increase in hospitalisations in South Africa. Now, this doesn't tell us why these patients are admitted, but it does tell us there's been an increase in hospitalisations, although not a dramatic one, it has to be said, compared to where we were earlier in the year. Now, this is current ward, these are patients in the wards in South Africa. 4.8, so 4,800 people actually in hospital. And these are people that have been diagnosed with SARS coronavirus 2. We know in South Africa it's basically all Omicron now. Not necessarily because they're in hospital for SARS coronavirus 2. In fact, most of them were just discovered to be SARS coronavirus 2 positive incidentally, because everyone going to hospital gets tested. So they're the number of people. So currently, these are in intensive care, these are in high care, and these are on the general ward. And this is for the whole 40 million population of South Africa, patients in hospital with COVID-19 or SARS coronavirus 2 positivity at the moment. And this shows the interventions. So there's 148 people that are positive in South Africa that are being ventilated, and 662 for the whole country that are receiving oxygen. So we see a continued very low rate of oxygen requirement, and this was live as of about an hour ago. This is from the live reference, which I'll give you. So very few people being oxygenated, requiring oxygen in South Africa, who are hospitalised with SARS coronavirus 2 confirmed infection. And of course, this is Omicron infection. So this remains encouraging. Now, this is the number of deaths in South Africa. This is for the these are the weeks. So this is 2021. This is halfway through the year, week 25. Deaths went down quite nicely, and we see that so far, is there an increase? Well, in that week there was 102, up from 55. So there is a slight increase, And this shows the weekly reported deaths in South Africa altogether. And this actually is the most concerning slide I'm showing today. It does actually show that there is an increase in overall deaths in South Africa. Now, it doesn't tell us why this increase is there, but that's above the upper and lower average for the time of year. So there is a slight increase in deaths in South Africa, but as I say, we don't know why that is. We just know that it is the case at the moment. And this shows the way that Delta's taken over in South Africa. So, sorry, that's Delta taken over there. This shows the way that Omicron's taken over. So, first of all, we had Beta, which was the original South Africa variant here. And that was outcompeted by Delta. And now Delta is being outcompeted by Omicron. So that's the pattern in South Africa at the moment. We see that virtually everyone at the moment who is positive in South Africa is coming up positive for Omicron, having replaced Delta. And this is an important point. The Omicron from South Africa is replacing Delta. It's not as well as, it's instead of. So here's all the references we've just looked at there. So do click on those for yourself, just check them out, they're all there, a click away. Now, Sir Patrick Vallance, speaking in from Downing Street yesterday, Chief Scientific Officer for the UK, from pandemic to endemic, where this becomes a more regular infection like flu over time. So there's a move, he's seeing this move to becoming more endemic. So that is good. This virus has mutated a lot quickly, and that is sort of what you would expect at this stage. So again, this is consistent with his experience. The good news is that so far, again, of course, he's hedging his bets here, as we all are, but I'm quite optimistic. It looks as though when you get very high antibody levels with the booster vaccine, it's definitely having some effect against it in laboratory studies. So he's saying that the booster vaccine works there, which we looked at data for that yesterday. But I'm also optimistic, which he's not really commenting on, is that people aren't getting sick, but he's keeping his powder dry on that at the moment. Boris Johnson is British Prime Minister, so again, working from home on Monday. This is the so-called Plan B, or aspects of the Plan B are now being implemented to prevent spread. Work from home on Monday, face masks in public venues, COVID mandates for passes for nightclubs and other crowded areas, daily testing instead of isolation for Omicron variant. So here we can see that they're expecting so many Omicron contacts that they've gone over to daily testing as opposed to isolation, because it means that no one will be available to go to work. So it's looking like, apart from that slight increase in the overall deaths in South Africa, it is looking remarkably promising for Omicron being a very mild disease, and the Omicron should replace Delta, as Delta replaced Alpha, and as Delta replaced Alpha in the UK, and as Delta replaced Beta in South Africa, which was originally called the South Africa variant. So we see that clear evolution in South Africa, which is really quite encouraging. So it could be that the pandemic is well and truly on its way out in terms of causing people to get sick, if it is that the Omicron variant continues not to make people sick. The big proviso is, of course, it can be sometimes 2, 3 or 4 weeks before people get sick, but we're not seeing it yet, apart from this slight increase in deaths in South Africa. But as I say, we don't know why there's an increase in deaths and hospitalisations in South Africa, even though they're not marked. We do know that most of the cases of SARS coronavirus 2 positivity in hospitals in South Africa have been incidental findings. So still fairly frustrating, still on tenterhooks really, seeing how this is going to go, but it is looking promising. Now, I'm just going to do a quick talk about this plant-based coronavirus vaccine from Canada. GlaxoSmithKline and Medicago. I'm not going to pronounce that. Primary endpoints and secondary endpoints in the trial have been met. And the trial here is dominated in the variants phase. Now, it's pre-Omicron days, but it's post-wild type of virus days. So this is invariant days, presumably alpha, beta and delta waves. This was mostly trialled in. Efficacy demonstrated against all variants seen in the study. So this particular vaccine seems to be working against all variants. 75.3 efficacy in COVID-19 of any severity caused by the Delta variant. So looking good for the Delta variant. Now, it's so interesting this because it's brewed up in plant cells, which is fascinating. Vaccine candidate was well tolerated with no serious events reported in the vaccine group. 24,000 adults. Again, phase 3 placebo-controlled trial. And this is the Canadian plant-based vaccine. Now, this is the world's first ever vaccine where the antigen is actually brewed up in plant cells. This is just absolutely a brilliant step forward for vegetarians and vegans, and probably for the entire world as well, because it's brewed up on potato cells and corn cells. it really is a major new way to make vaccines. And the British GlaxoSmithKline pandemic adjuvant is going in it. Now, the adjuvant is something which increases the immune reaction to the vaccine, to the actual antigen. So, in other words, the Canadian group are producing the antigen, which is the bit that the human immune system will actually recognise as being foreign, and the adjuvant is making the antigen more antigenic, if you like, generating a better immune response. Brian Ward, medical officer at Mexico, plants that are used simply as bioreactors to produce the antigen, so they produce in bioreactors with plant cells. Health Canada, US FDA, UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency and the World Health Organization have all been approached for approval. So interesting what will happen there. World Health Organization point out produce cheaply in very high amounts. Carrier plants such as potatoes and corn. Antigen created are fridge stable, so the antigen is the actual vaccine, the part of the vaccine that the immune system will recognise as being foreign. Fridge stable, so you can ship it all around the world in a normal icebox. Can be stored for long periods of time, don't know how long, probably talking months. Likelihood that a plant virus will get in the way is minimal, so that is good because plant viruses don't generally, in fact, I've never heard of a plant virus infecting any animal actually. Vets and botanists out there, correct me by all means, but I've never heard of a plant virus jumping to an animal. Virus-like particles for protein vaccines, so they're producing virus-like particles, but they're empty shells with no RNA. So we're going to end up with something that's kind of, I don't know what it's like yet, but it's going to look like a bit like a. It won't be shaped like the virus, it'll have the proteins, the same protein constituents I would imagine, but of course there's no RNA inside it, so it's not transmissible, it's not going to make the person sick, so keep an eye on that. But plant-based vaccines, wow, that really is a new thing. It's not new, it's been on the go they've been developing it for about 20 years, it's just sort of come to fruition at the right time. And then finally, Sally, who we saw had typical symptoms before, asked this question: can you explain how one variant replaces another? Does the other variant just fade out? So can you explain? So in this case, the Omicron variant is more transmissible, more able to survive, more likely to reproduce than the Delta variant, so it simply outcompetes it. This is natural evolution, it's the survival of the fittest and less fit, and in this case, thankfully, very, very thankfully, the less fit variant is the Delta variant. So it is simply outcompeted by a fitter variant. Does the other variant just fade out? Well, it goes away, but it doesn't fade out, it's outcompeted. It is denied the ecological niches, that is in you and me, it is denied the ecological niches in which to reproduce. So it has nowhere to reproduce, so it dies out. Yeah, it does fade out, it's outcompeted, in this case by the Omicron variant. So it's a simple Darwinian survival of the fittest situation. So, and as we saw in that graphic, basically there's no Delta reproducing now in South Africa, it's all Omicron, and that is my hope for the world. We really are, you know, the next couple of weeks is going to be pretty tense, and but so far it's looking like Omicron could be our way out of this pandemic. Not human beings being clever, it's just the natural evolution of the viruses. So, cause for human humility there, I think. So I remain optimistic. I'm going to report on this till we've got something definite, and but it really is so far so good. Just before I go, we put the thing on yesterday for free downloads of the books. Not my books. Lots of people have done that, and I was actually talking to my. These are free in PDFs, of course. I was talking to a technician about it, and he says that he thinks that since the middle of last year we've downloaded about 90,000 copies. So I'm just so pleased. You know, you sit there, you know, writing books, and you know your whole life ends up going into these flipping books. It takes ages, and sometimes you'll spend all day writing. You think, God, you know, I'm really tired after a day's writing. Do you think anyone is ever going to read this? And the idea that 90,000 people have downloaded it and hopefully are reading it really is it really is great justification for all the happy days. Well, they weren't that bad, but all the days I spent writing these two books, and there were quite a few of them. So absolutely delighted they're being read, and hopefully the diagrams are being